Yeah.
Right. A very good day to everyone, and thank you for taking time to join in today's webinar. Today we will be focusing on job recruitment, and I think we have people in our midst that have from different backgrounds, irrespective of where you are today or in your journey in getting yourself a settled role. I think today's webinar will be very beneficial for you. Today we shall be looking at very, very key information you need in your job search, things like CV, CV drafting, preparation for interview. So irrespective of where you are, I have a friend, just by looking at his CV alone, I put on LinkedIn, he got a job, just straight away. And it's very important that first impression counts a lot.
You can talk.
We'll be looking at other areas in terms of job selection process. I'll be talking briefly about sponsorship type of roles, and when we're coming from that perspective as well, for those who are in maybe a student or in post-study work experience and looking for sponsorship type of jobs, I'm going to come from that perspective. We're going to have two testimonials, hopefully today, from two persons who have secured jobs, foreigners, so to speak, and secure jobs, and they'll share their testimonies and their journey with yourself, so that it's very clear where you are in this, and that will help you in this process. So what is to happen next? I want to introduce Mr. Ben Chatfield. He will be giving a talk around this particular topic. So without any further ado, I will invite Mr. Ben. He is a search and recruitment specialist focusing on the financial sector, but however, it will still be beneficial to everyone, irrespective of your area of discipline. So without any further ado, I want to invite Mr. Ben to start the presentation. Mr. Ben, over to you.
Thanks, John. So yeah, look, John's kindly invited me to give a bit of an overview about searching for new roles, particularly at the moment, I think in quite a challenging market, not just in the UK, but obviously globally as well. So a lot of what I will talk about might come back to kind of banking and finance, and that's because that's the area that I specialize in. But I think the point John made there, kind of irrespective of your sector, a lot of the points we'll touch on today will be hopefully beneficial for any kind of industry. I think there's a lot of crossover and synergy between different areas. So yeah, to start with, as John said, I am a senior director at Carline Search and Selection, and we're a financial service sort of boutique recruiter. We've been around now since the early 90s, and we focus really in three kind of core areas, and I'll just touch on those quickly. So we do mostly into banks, but we also work with fintechs, we work for insurance companies, and some corporate companies as well. But the three areas that we look at are front office, so origination, relationship management, sales type roles, and also kind of the product functions behind them. So leverage finance, project finance, trade finance, obviously how I know John. We also do a lot on the credit side, compliance as well. So just to recap what we're going to kind of cover today, we're going to look at kind of creating a CV. So this is the starting point of any kind of job search. It's creating your CV, creating your profile, getting your brand out to market. We're then going to look at kind of searching for a job and best practices around that. We'll then touch on kind of interview techniques, and then actually just understanding what happens from that first interview to actually when you get an offer, the timeline, the process, the different kind of nuances and challenges you might face on that particular path. John's going to touch on some of the sponsorship and visa subjects. And then, as John also said, we've got a couple of testimonials, hopefully from Sam and Victor today. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A, which hopefully we'll have enough time to do, and you guys can ask as many questions as you like. So let's get started here. So I'd say creating a CV. So this is the first thing you'll be doing when you're starting to look for a job. Very basically, you want to begin your CV with your full name, your contact information, phone number, email, optionally put your address on there. Fundamentally, you've got to make sure it's all up to date. There's a number of times where I'll receive CVs and the email's wrong or there's no phone number. If a recruiter or a bank or a corporate can't get hold of you, that's you're falling down the first hurdle there. So that's the key thing, getting the personal details at the top of the CV. The next point on here is kind of a personal statement, and this is really your 1 paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs of you selling yourself. So you don't want to overdo it. Keep it relatively brief at the beginning of the CV. Highlight your skills, your experience, your career goals, but really tailor it to the specific job you're applying for. So highlight the strengths and why you're a good fit for it. When a hiring manager receives a CV, straight below your personal details, the first thing they're going to look at is the personal statement. If that's specifically tailored to the job you're applying for, you've got their attention straight away and they're going to read on. So I think, although you might end up changing this quite frequently, it's really, really important to kind of tailor it for the specific job that you're applying for. And I'll talk about this quite a lot through the presentation, because I do think it's a really key point. Employment history. List your work experience in reverse chronological order. Start with your most recent position. Include the company name, where you're working, job title, the dates of employment, and obviously a description of your responsibilities and achievements. And also obviously put on there your kind of skills and accomplishments that again are relevant to the role that you're applying for. With the dates of employment, make sure you get this correct, because this comes up later in the process when you've received an offer. Most clients now will do a background check, and it's quite a thorough background check. So they're going to be looking at your education certificates. They're going to be looking at your dates of employment. So this all needs to align. There have been cases in my experience where this hasn't matched up, and some banks, or any client really can look at that kind of unfavorably. So make sure all that information is accurate. So let's have a look at an example CV. I think this is probably quite a useful thing to do here. So let me just jump into a CV. So just going back over the points, personal details right at the top. You've got the name, you've got nationality, where you're based, visa. Now this won't be applicable for everybody, but if you require sponsorship or you have a visa already, make it very clear what that visa is, whether that's a tier 2, a youth mobility visa, whatever it might be. Have that visa information on the CV. Put on there when it expires, when it started from, and obviously if you will require sponsorship, from what date. So that's quite important there, to have that information clear at the top of the CV. Educational information, again, make sure the dates are correct there, but I would always put this at the top of the CV. And as we go down, I mean, this is quite a junior person, but they put a brief introduction. So dedicated and results-driven corporate banking analyst with Big Four experience. Straight away, that first sentence, I know what that person does. I know where they sit. I've got a little bit of an idea on their previous experience as well. The next point here, looking to use relationship management and credit experience to join a busy corporate banking desk. Perfect. And I now know very briefly what they do and what they're looking to do. Key strengths include managing client relationships, especially with mid-market size corporates in the energy sector, Big Four trained, extremely comfortable analysing financial statements. So really, in that introduction, I've got quite a good idea of what this person does and what they're looking for, which for a hiring manager, that's really, really important to me. What you might want to do, and which this person hasn't necessarily done, is maybe put a little bit around your personality, and any kind of key achievements, whether that's educational. If you haven't got prior work experience, but you've got a master's, or whatever it might be worth highlighting any kind of achievements there as well. Then you're going into the work experience sector. Again, you've got the organization that this person worked for, you've got the job title that they were doing, you've got the location of that role as well, which is clear. The dates are on the side, so I know the dates of employment, and then I've got the main responsibilities of that job. This is where you might tailor it depending on the job that you're applying for. This person's looking for a corporate banking analyst role. They've made it clear that they've got credit and financial statement analysis and their first bullet point of the CV. So whatever's most relevant to the role, have that higher up in your responsibilities, because that, again, when you're applying for jobs, the chance of you being the only one applying for that job are pretty slim. So there's going to be a lot of CVs that you're competing against. So this is the kind of your window into what you do and your experience. So make it quite punchy and tie it into the job experience. And then look, this is a page, just over a page long. There was always kind of an unwritten rule that you would kind of keep CVs to one page. I don't personally buy into that, and that's more of a personal opinion. So, if you've got lots of experience and it takes up 2 pages or 3 pages of a CV, then that's absolutely fine. But what's important is it's really clear, it's concise. The font that they're using here is easy to read. I can see exactly what they're doing. So for me, that would be a good example of a CV, and I'm quite happy to share this afterwards, John, if anybody wants a copy as a reference point, or the template. So yeah, just a final thoughts on the CV side of things. Format and presentation, ensure that the CV has professional and clean layout, which we talked about. Use clear headings, bullet points, and an easy to read font, and just keep it concise. Tailoring, this is probably the most important part of the CV, in my opinion. It's customizing your CV for each job application. That's an awful lot of work, but if you know what you're applying for, and if you're applying for the same types of roles, then obviously you're not changing it every time. But study the job descriptions and the requirements, and adapt your CV to highlight the skills and experience most relevant to the role. So yeah, I think if you take one thing away from the CV, that's really, really important. It's making it relevant to the roles that you're applying for. I've also put a note on there around quantifiable achievements. So by this, I'm just saying use specific examples and quantifiable achievements to demonstrate your impact in previous roles. For example, if you're in a sales role and you joined and there was 5 clients in Europe, 12 months later, there's 10 clients in Europe that you've onboarded, then make that really clear, because that's a clear achievement, but it's also quantifiable, and it's a talking point in an interview process. So that's a very kind of basic overview on the CV side of things, and obviously happy to discuss that in more detail towards the end. Once you've got the CV and you're now ready to kind of start looking for roles, finding a banking job or any job requires, I guess, a combination of research, networking, and strategic job searching. So here are just a couple of steps to help you pursue your job. So determine your preferred banking job. This is really important. So have a clear idea of what roles you're applying for, why you're applying for them. When you're talking to recruiters, one of the questions that they're going to ask you is, what roles are you looking for? What roles are you interested in? Have a good idea of why you're interested in those types of roles, because it makes our job on the other end easier, because we will have a portfolio of clients that will cover that particular area, and we can obviously then speak to them on your behalf. So just be kind of clear in terms of what roles you're looking for. That's obviously a question as well that's going to come up in an interview process. Why are you looking for that role? So bear that in mind. Consult recruitment agencies. There's hundreds of recruitment agencies that all cover different sectors, different industries. So you're going to speak to multiple agencies at one time. Even with us in the areas that we work in, I can think of 4 or 5 other agencies that cover those areas off the top of my head. So you're going to want to speak to multiple agencies. Probably the difference is that certain agencies will cover different clients. So even if they're covering the same sectors, I personally don't work very closely with the American banks. So another agency might be better suited for you to work with if that's a particular target area for you. So when you're talking to agencies, make sure you get an understanding from them. What do they cover? What does their portfolio of clients look like? And where does it tie into your job search? What I would also always do, if possible, is try and meet with the recruitment agencies as well, the consultants, because you're going to go on a journey with them through a process. And if you've met them face to face and you've had a conversation, you're going to have a much better relationship going on that journey. There's going to be difficult conversations, that you'll feedback that you're not always going to want to hear. You might have questions that you want to ask that you don't feel necessarily comfortable about asking. But if you've got a relationship with a recruitment agency, and particularly a recruitment consultant, it's definitely worth putting the time in and building that relationship. There's a number of people that I've worked with over the last 15 years that I've placed in multiple roles at different times. And, I might meet somebody 10 years ago and then have a role for them 5 years later. So it just depends. So yeah, definitely spend time and build a network with recruitment agencies and consultants. Build a professional network. This is a great platform that John's set up here. Use your professional network, talk to as many people as you can do. If you're targeting certain clients, so do you know somebody that works at that institutional organization that can give you some more insight? Are there people that you've studied with in the past that have moved to institutions that you would like to work at? Really utilize your network. And I think also on that point, use tools like LinkedIn and eFinancial Careers as well. But a lot of the successful people going into roles, they'll utilize their network as well as working with recruitment agencies, as well as using job boards. So there's lots of different attacks that you can approach this with. But yeah, I think the professional network is a really, really key thing to focus on. So at this point, you've created your CV, you've identified the types of roles that you're going to want to be applying for. With the recruitment agency's help or your own network's help, you've now got your CV in front of the hiring manager and they want to interview you. This is really the business end almost. So it's really important to prepare. If you want to perform well in interviews, you can never do too little preparation. So the more you research, the more you practice, the more you refine your responses, the more confident and competent you're actually going to appear in that interview process. So to start with, research the company. The recruitment agencies can help you with this. A lot of the recruitment agencies will work with companies that they've worked with for 10, 15, 20 years. So they'll have a really good insight into that company. Use Google, use the internet, have a look at any major events that have happened around the company, have a look at the size of the company, find reasons why you're interested in that company. Because again, when you're in an interview situation, the research you've done on that company is going to be invaluable, because ultimately one of the questions that every interviewer will ask is, why are you interested in the company? And if you can give some really interesting facts around that and points, it's invaluable. It's really, really important. At the same time, the more you research a company, actually you might be put off by that company. The company culture might not suit your own ethics, or you'll get bad reviews on companies as well. So the due diligence you do at this point is beneficial for you in an interview, but also it's beneficial in your decision-making process. Do I want to work for this company? Understanding the job requirements. I think we've sort of touched on this, but I think the two key areas here are: talk to a recruiter, talk to someone in your network, look at the job spec. Every job spec will have key requirements on there, and make sure that you understand those key requirements. And when you're in an interview situation, you can pull out bullet points from the job spec that tie in with your own experience. And that's really, really important. Prepare and practice, obviously, we've talked about that, but I would definitely, particularly around kind of scenario-based questions, which I think are quite unnatural questions. So things around, if you can give me an example of a time you had to deal with a difficult client and how you resolved that. So those scenario-based questions don't necessarily flow the same way as if someone's asking you why you're interested in a job. So I would prepare on the scenario-based questions. I would prepare on things like strengths and weaknesses. And again, when you're doing things like strengths and weaknesses, tie that into the job, tie that into the role that you're applying for. Dress professionally. Again, we don't really need to talk about this in too much detail. Showcase your strengths. There's going to be lots of things that you've done in your life and in your career that are going to benefit a future employer. Just make sure they know what they are, make sure it's coherent, make sure it ties in with the job that you're applying for, but sell yourself. I mean, ultimately, an interview is an opportunity for you to sell yourself and talk yourself up. So make sure you're showcasing your strengths. The CV is a starting point. The bullet points on the CV are the questions that any interviewer is going to ask you around. Be able to go into those in much more detail, I think, is key, and obviously showcase your strengths on that. Active listening. What do I mean by this? I think, depending on your experience, an interview situation can be quite unnervy. You can be quite nervous. It's really important to actually listen to the question that you're being asked and make sure the answer that you give is clear and concise. I think human nature, if you're nervous, you sometimes go off on tangents, and actually you might not answer the question that's being asked. So just pay attention on that side in terms of the questions. And then the final point here is just ask thoughtful questions. In 15 years of recruiting into banking roles into the city, I don't think there's ever been an interview where the interviewer at the end of the conversation doesn't ask, have you got any questions? Of course, a lot of those questions that you've probably got have been answered in the conversation that you're having with the interviewer, but I would almost write a list of 10 questions before your interview of things that you want to know, whether that's the company's strategy going forward, whether that's around development in a role, whether that's around the company culture, whether it's around, I guess, the role responsibilities in more detail. Have 10 questions that you are ready to ask the interviewer at the end of the interview. It does two things. I think one, it gives the interviewer a chance to kind of come back and give you a bit more feedback around the role and the organization. It shows a level of interest from your side. It shows that you've taken time to think up these questions. And I think that's always a good buying signal in an interview situation. But again, it goes back to the point of you're going to interview with some places where actually you might not want to work. The only way you're going to determine that is by asking lots and lots of questions. You're going to get only so much information from a job description or a conversation with a recruiter or someone in your network. When you're face-to-face in an interview situation, the more questions that you ask that person, the more informed you can make a decision at the end of the process. Is this the right role for me? Do I want to progress in this opportunity? And then I just think here, just around the interview to the offer, and just what you kind of need to know in terms of the process. So the market at the moment, and I'm speaking in terms of the banking market because that's the area that I know, the market's quite slow. And I don't mean that by there's not a lot of jobs out there, because there are. It's actually the process from that first interview to actually receiving an offer. So most interviews, there's going to be 3 to 5 stages, I would say, on average, from meeting the hiring manager to meeting the head of HR or the HR business partner So understand at the start of the process how many interviews are involved in this process. What's the salary banding? The last thing you want to do is go through an interview process, invest a lot of time, and actually what the organization can offer you financially at the end of that process doesn't match your own requirements. So understand at the start of a process kind of what the salary banding is. Most organizations will have salary bandings for different corporate grades. So you need to get an idea of where your experience fits within that corporate grading structure and what the likelihood is in terms of salary you're going to get at the end of it. Will you be eligible for a bonus? I mean, it depends on the organization. But again, you want to be aware of that because that might come in and be a factor in terms of negotiating the offer. If you're joining at a certain point of the year, you might miss a cutoff point for a bonus. If your probation is 6 months instead of 3 months, you might not be eligible for a bonus. So you're just painting a full picture here. If I join this organization, what am I getting into from a financial perspective? What are the benefits? What does the healthcare look like? What do the holidays look like? What does maternity leave look like? Get an idea of the whole benefit package as well. Does the company offer sponsorship? And John, I know you're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, but I think you want to know this at the start of a process because post-Brexit, I think from my experience, most organizations that I work with are much more open to sponsor than they probably ever have been in the past, definitely in my experience. But that's not all organizations. So it will depend on the visa, it will depend on multiple factors, but make sure you kind of know at the start of that process, will this organization sponsor me if I'm successful? You've obviously, if you do require sponsorship, you've highlighted that at the start of your CV as well. So again, the recruiter's aware, the employer's aware as well. So again, just make sure you know the situation with the company policy around sponsorship. Once you've done all the hard work, there's still a little bit further to go here. So once you're successful in the final interview, you're going to be presented with a verbal offer. This is probably the opportunity that you'll get to kind of negotiate that offer. So the verbal offer, if you're working with a recruitment consultant, will come through them. You'll discuss that with the recruitment consultant. They will then go back, if you're happy with it, to accept the offer on your behalf. The point I made earlier about getting to know the recruitment consultant, nobody really likes talking about money, but if you've got a good relationship with the recruitment consultant, they can be honest with you if your expectations are too high. And they can also be honest with you if they think the organization's coming in too low for your experience. But if you've got that relationship, you can have an adult conversation around that and ultimately work together to get the end result that you're both looking to achieve. So once you've agreed on that verbal offer, the next part here is you're going to receive a contract. Contracts might take a week, might take 10 days to get to you. Most contracts, and to be aware of this, is once they're issued, we'll have an expiry date on that contract. So take your time to review the contract, but also be aware if that contract expires in 5 days, make sure you know that as well, and your recruiter should tell you that. When that contract's returned and it's signed, the background checks start. This goes back to the information that you've put on your CV originally. So all the companies that I work with will tend to use third-party background screening companies that will check the dates of employment are correct. The educational certificates that you've said you have are correct. So make sure, again, that CV right at the very start of this process is in line with all your experience, because the last thing you want to do is get to this point of the process and it falls down on something here. So yeah, the emphasis on being accurate and detailed on the CV, I can't put enough emphasis on that, because that is so important. Whilst the background checks are going on in the background, the start date will then be agreed with your future employer. So that's kind of the very basic process from creating a CV, going through an interview, searching for a job, and then obviously what happens post the offer. I'm quite conscious I've spoken quite a lot here, so I don't know if Samuel, do you want to share your experience? Are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
No.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, yeah. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, so my experience is similar to what you said. I was actually approached by a headhunter
I'm thinking,
who
do you want to share your video, or you want to unstop sharing the screen while he talks?
okay, yeah, can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, I can't even see myself, so sorry, hold on.
You're on mute now. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, so mine was quite unique in the sense that I wasn't actually actively applying. I was approached by a headhunter because I had the right experience they were looking for. So the key thing, like he said, just make sure you prepare your CV. At the time, I was fortunate in that my CV was quite prepared and they liked it. The recruiter liked it. They passed it on to the company liked it as well. And I was invited for an interview. Fortunately, I had some good mentors in John and Akila, who had, some exposure to KYC compliance field as well. So it's always good to have someone, in my opinion anyway, that you can approach to, kind of prepare you for interview, kind of tell you what interview questions to expect. Definitely YouTube is strong as well. It's quite good. Online tools, resources online are quite good. But yeah, just have someone that whom you can prep you up and do the interview just as like a dummy or practice interview, just kind of like prepare you for what to expect. And then the 5 key points which the host explained is quite nice in terms of what are the benefits of the job, what to expect as well, having questions ready, kind of shows that you've done your background research and your potential employer, because it shows that you have interest in them. Because if you don't have any questions, then that shows you probably didn't do your background research and you don't have so much interest, especially in the corporate culture, how they do their things, what benefits they offer. So in this day and age where people work hybrid as well, it's important to know how they work and how their policies would affect you as well. So those are some of the key things. I was in Nigeria initially when I was approached and got the job. The head office is in London, so it was quite a good move for me and my family as well. It was it was really, really good. I was fortunate, to be fair. But the key thing is just you have to be prepared, just like the host has said, and a lot of times you have to be really prepared and position yourself to be able to get it. So yeah, with the right help, having the mentors around, having people to put me through draft interviews just to kind of prepare me for what to expect. Another thing is the headhunter also prepared me for interview. I think we shouldn't be shy to speak to the headhunter who approaches you, for example, and say to them, okay, if the company approaches you directly, that's a bit different. But if a recruitment company approaches you, you can, prior to the interview, because it's in their best interest if you succeed as well, you can actually speak to them and say to them, okay, you approached me for firm C. Can you do a dummy interview with me? Just what should I prepare for? Since you've worked with them before, what should I expect? And they would actually put you through because your success is their success. Because I don't know if they make commission somehow back end, but definitely the way they actually took time to prepare me, you could tell they were interested in me. And that was just what was key for me. And yeah, so that's just basically a summary of some of the key things I enjoyed. And it's good, especially if you're in another country, for example, coming into a new country. It's important to understand the jurisdiction and the rules that guides the operation in that jurisdiction you're moving into. Sponsorship is one of the key stumbling blocks that people face when trying to seek jobs, especially when you're not British. But if you have the right competence, I'm sure, because I have a few friends, I have about 5 friends who have received sponsorship because they have the right competence, they have the right knowledge. So I think that's the most important thing. When they see the value you're bringing is worth more than the cost of $5,000 of paying a sponsorship, they would actually take that risk and bring you on board. So yeah, that's just the points I have to make so far.
No, thanks for that, Sammy. That's insightful. And the point you made about the recruiters in terms of prepping for interviews, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we will spend time with you preparing you for an interview. We can give you insight into the client. We can give you examples of questions that they may have asked historically, because to your point, ultimately, if you're successful, we're successful. So it's a partnership. It's forming a partnership with the candidate and getting to know each other, which is really important. I think, John, did you want to talk a little bit about visas and sponsorship whilst we've touched on that just now?
Yeah, I could do that. I need to share my screen, so let me do that. It's okay. You might want to share your screen. Let me share mine. You can find. Yeah. Let's have a look. Yeah, I'm just looking for the. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
We can see your screen.
All right, fantastic. So I'll be talking about some guides, some tips. I think some of them could be repetitive because I have seen some of what I'm going to talk about also being mentioned already. This will apply for people who don't have a right to work in the UK. If you find that some of the jobs you're applying for, they'll ask, do you have the right to work in the UK in the form of a visa, or do you have like a British passport to be able to work here? You might even be applying to a different country, and I think this webinar will also be helpful to you as well. They have different arrangements to give you that pathway to have the right to work eligibly in those countries. We'll be focusing on mostly UK. We talk about it needs to have some form of sponsorship. That's the current way the platform the government has put in place. So you have people might be in the forum who are students, and who they are also in the process of getting sponsorship, or they are in post-study work experience and trying to break in through the market and getting that first breakthrough job that gives them that sponsorship. Some of you might be here today, you might be applying from abroad and you're looking for a good job that will give you sponsorship. You might be in the financial sector, you might be in the care and health sector, you might be someone in the financial crime or financial crime sector, you might be a project manager. Whatever you are, most of the jobs tend to have some form of sponsorship arrangement. I like what Samuel said. Let me just go to my first slide. We talked about CV. I cannot overemphasize the need to have your CV done to a professional standard. I think we just highlighted a few tips here in today's webinar to have your CV done properly well, because your CV is the first thing that the employer will see and know about you. It's what your CV is, what speaks to the employer or recruiter. I say, oh, I like this CV. I have a friend in LikeMinds. He got a job. He got a job in the UK. He came in as a student. The job he got was because his CV was done to a very, very good standard. He did the CV for him. He uploaded on LinkedIn. A recruiter saw it. He was so impressed. He started the following day, straight away, just like that. So I cannot emphasize that. If you need support, feel free. LikeMinds, we support people in different areas in helping them with their CV. So let us know. We're happy to help you with that, such request. Also, some training and certification. If you need any form of, if you are, ensure you don't some form of training or certification to support your application. If you are a banker or if you are applying for a banker role that needs some form of, and that's a certification that gives you an advantage it's always important to do it and to get it. You're a project manager, you want to get a job as a Scrum Master, or you have a Prince 2 qualification, or which other qualification you think you will need, or you are in care, have you done the right trainings? So your CV says those things you have done. It's very important to capture those things very clearly on your CV to go a long, long way. We talked a lot about putting your CV in the right platform. We talked about LinkedIn, especially those who apply for jobs in different countries in the UK. Ensure your CV, if you're looking for jobs, especially in professional jobs in the banking sector or in the financial sector, whichever sector you're looking at, you look for jobs put your job in the right platforms out there. I think that goes a long way. LinkedIn is actively becoming one of the most important job recruitment platforms out there. When people getting jobs, so that's cannot be overemphasized. I like what Ben talked earlier on. Talk to some recruiters. Pick up a call. I've had one case of a person talking to an employer. They find out a job somewhere. He called the company up. I've indicated interest in the role. I'm calling because I'm passionate of who I am. I'm interested in this role. So okay, fine, apply for the job. He applied, and that's how he got the job. So sometimes you go the extra mile. Give the company a call. If you find they're recruiting and they provide sponsorship, you could give them a call and say, this is who you are, introduce your skill, talk to them a bit about who you are. And from there, they might tell you, okay, submit your CV. And that will go a long way in helping your case. Talked about the whole time for job search. I know if you are in student or you are in maybe post-study, you might be doing some other kind of job that ordinarily speaking, you might not want to do at this particular point in time. You might have a previous experience as a banker or an architect or engineer. Maybe you might be working as a security. That's not what you want to do in the UK. But set time. If you are so saddled with trying to get trying to pay your bills or trying to make money and not focusing on set time to apply for jobs, then you might find that you might just be a year, 2 years might pass you by and you're still not successful. So devote certain time of the day, and that time will be for job search and application. I cannot overemphasize that. Just give yourself certain time. This time of the day, I'll be applying for jobs, as many as is possible as you can. Target jobs that are open to sponsorship. I want to share with you another slide that focusing on jobs that are open for sponsorship. I think the recruiter did mention that already. At the point of applying, if you need sponsorship, have a look at this. Are they providing sponsorship? Then you can apply. Practice job interviews. When you have an interview, it's important. You might not have a second chance, or you might have another opportunity. Get someone that is within the same space with you, or someone who's working in that particular area with yourself. Do a mock interview for you, and test yourself how you answer the questions, because it's always important to do that. In that way, you will know how well you will perform in that particular interview. Join like-minded groups and mentorship groups. Like I said, we have LikeMinds. We have LikeMinds, and LikeMinds, what we do is we provide mentorship, career development. We help ourselves basically through networking. It's an African professional network aimed at providing manpower development, and that's more what we do. And we try to support ourselves. I have other groups which I am also part of, and the idea is to support ourselves in various fields and various expertise. So yes, join those networking platforms. They go a long way. Build your network. Just in addition to that, talk to your friends. I think they mentioned about it previously. Talk to some friends who are in that area, who are in the UK. And a couple of years ago when I came, I worked with friends, closely with friends, which helped me to get my first breakthrough. Alumni, and these days you have a lot of alumni forums in the UK or in your group. You have alumni groups, people already resident in the UK or in Canada or in the US. Join those groups and network properly and let people know this is what you need, and you have the right support in those forums. They will point you in the right direction. There are diaspora forums as well. LikeMinds is a diaspora forum. There are a few of them out there that get towards helping people within the diaspora. I would encourage you to do that. Career forums, do that as well. Professional networking groups, join those ones also. They go a long, long way. Talking about sites. So if you're looking for sponsorship jobs, there's a site called this. The first one you look at my screen is uktrsponsor.co.uk. If you're looking for jobs in the UK, it's a very, very good site. If you click on that link, I'll copy and paste that link on the chat. If you click on the link, it takes you to the screen. You see the screen on the left, on the right hand side, where you can actually sort by sector. You know, or you could type in the name of the company on that site. It will tell you whether that company is a sponsor, if the company sponsors anyone or not. So I think that will go a long way to help you to streamline your search. There's also a Home Office publication online, which is updated regularly. It contains tons of companies, but it's challenging to go through that particular list. It's quite a lot, I will tell you the truth. But having said that, the first one will give you a very good indication, just a site. You click on the link, you could type it in, you could copy that, type it in, and search for the name of the company before you apply for the job. A couple of very, very good recruitment sites out there. Indeed, it's becoming a very, very good tool. Total Jobs, Read, LinkedIn. Talk about LinkedIn is very important. Most of my last 3 or 4 jobs has been via LinkedIn directly. Job sites, talent.com, eFinancials. There are other ones out there. It depends on your area where you're focusing on. This is more around corporate jobs. If you are looking at jobs in the health and the care sector, it might be an entirely different site. You might be looking at NHS, Care Health, job.co.uk, or different platforms. But this is more targeted at or more of a corporate financial sector type of jobs. So this is also a good one for you guys to use. When you join the site, refresh your CV on even a weekly basis, so that when they are looking for jobs, they know that you are active. If your job is refreshed regularly, you get calls. If you leave it dormant, you don't get calls. So always good to go in, refresh your CV when you apply for jobs, because it shows that yes, you are actively looking for jobs. Otherwise, it goes dormant and nobody calls you. So that's also very, very important. Register your CV to get jobs alert when that fits into your career path which you're looking at. So you get regular updates on jobs once they come in. Okay. If a snapshot of some few companies, multinational companies that tend to recruit, that are very, very open to recruitment, I thought to make just a list a few for those in the corporate sector looking for corporate jobs. A snapshot of some of the companies that are very multinational in nature, that are very open to providing sponsorship. Barclays, PwC, JP Morgan, HSBC, Lloyds, NatWest, Deutsche, Clifford Chance, Google. You know, I spoke with someone today, an ex-colleague of mine. Her daughter got a job in the first year in the university by Clifford Chance. She applied for a program, a program for, I think it's an internship program. And during that internship program, they went into an interview phase, and she was employed from 100 level year 1. Someone from, I think she was from Nigeria, you know, and before she moved to Nigeria, she got a job offer already. Not working, but gave them stipends and the university fee was paid. Law school fees were also paid by the law firm. It's fantastic. I haven't heard of that before, but it still happens. It still happens. So just ensure you put yourself out there, study hard, you get your CV right. So lastly, align yourself, get yourself involved in different forums like this, webinar, seminar, or workshop. They do help a lot, provide you with useful information. Thank you, and feel free if you want to know more about LikeMinds, you want to be part of the group. Look up us on our website. We have a contact numbers there and email address. Feel free to send us a call and give us a call, and we'll discuss for that. Thank you. Let me stop sharing my screen. I'll hand it back to you. Back to you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. So can everybody see my screen again now?
No, your screen is not up.
Fine. Let me just. Whilst we're having a few technical issues here, should we go do we have a bit of a question and answer session? Are there any questions that anybody wants to cover off?
We could. I tell you what we'll do now. Before you share your screen, we could have the second testimonial. We have.
Yeah, good idea.
Is Victor on the screen? Is here today?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, cool, good. So let's have your testimony.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I'm Victor Adekunle by name. I'm from Nigeria. Well, unlike the other, the first testimony, I was in the UK when I got my own job. Well, I think I don't know, it's just an opportunity to speak. But maybe the highlight of my own testimony will be the fact that I got to the UK to think about what I want to switch into. So it took me like a year, though I started just immediately. I got here and I thought about what is working and what I was doing. Can I continue with that? While I was in Nigeria, I was fully into cryptocurrency trading. So basically, I was just working on my own. Though I was doing my master's and then I started my PhD in Nigeria, but I wasn't ready to go into academics. So I was studying mathematics. So I got into the UK and I was avoiding teaching or like going into the classroom. I don't know. Sorry if there's anybody there who's into lecturing and like I just knew I needed something different. Okay. So I avoided that. I started working as a support worker. I mean, something related to care jobs and like, and just I think 2 months into that, I started my research and I was trying to see what would work here. So I've been interested in data science, data analysis before then, and I don't know what they were. I mean, the differences. So I've been doing analysis, but not specifically using the tools that I use now. So I started joining, I think, in March. That was last year, March. And then from one online program to the other, free training, different training there and there. Some I had to pay. I mean, I could remember I jumped on a program with MIT remotely. That's in the US. I was in the UK. I mean, I've been in the UK since then. So that took like 12 weeks, paid about £1,700. Dollars. I don't know if it helped. Yes, definitely it did, but not like everybody has to go through that route. And that was how the journey started. That really drew me into programming, which I didn't plan for, to be honest. And but right now, today, I'm working as a data analyst, and one of the tools I use basically is Python, like with a UK company here. And I think what makes my the thing very interesting to me, or let me say the journey and unique, is the fact that it took me like few months, let me say like 6 months to a year, to transition. And I wouldn't believe it, honestly. I knew some people actually got there in 3 months, but the fact that something I have not been doing before, I started like from the beginning, from scratch, and then one step over the other, and then I got a job like after I think early this year, like 3 months into the year, and from LinkedIn, really didn't know anyone. I I I think I spoke with John, and he asked me a few questions and about the fact that I need to have a UK experience. And fortunately, when I got here, I've been trying to volunteer with people just to the with the mind of learning data analytics from different companies and maybe places I can just learn the tools or use whatever I know. And that really helped me, though I didn't have the opportunity to practice as much. But the fact that I've been drawn into let me say information analysis and all sort of things, insights and all, giving people insight like from the company, and that really helped me, and that really stood out in my CV as well. And I think the other thing is I didn't count what I've been doing before now as important. Like I said, I've been into cryptocurrency trading, and I do some analysis over the market and some other things like that. Also in my research programs where I've been working basically on mathematics, I didn't count that also as something that relates with data science until I spoke with just IMI, just like a program like this. Then somebody started talking about what we've been doing before, how we can really make sense of them. So and that really changed my mentality about the fact that I don't have experience at all. And that was the game changer for me. I started building my confidence from there because I've been going around saying I don't have experience in this thing. How do I say I'm just starting? I started just online. I took the course and all sort of things. But then I jumped on different projects that are free, unpaid, just to gain experience as well on LinkedIn mostly. And I think the other things were things that I placed in my CV. I also paid to learn how to write a proper CV. and to interview. I mean, I paid a lot. That was like the one that cost me most. Of all the things I paid for was that particular aspect, because while after I was done with the whole learning thing, I still didn't have the confidence to apply. Honestly, I was not scared. I was just like, am I really ready? Is it time? Do I know enough to really sit for an interview? Because I've never even worked for anyone in my life, honestly. Like, this is the first time I got into the UK to start working. So I don't even know what it feels like to sit for an interview. And so I had to pay to learn that, and that really helped me. And I got to understand that interviews were they are more psychological than technical. If you can create a good impression from the first day, I mean, you can really go far, and that could help. And that was the whole thing for me. I wasn't going for the interview because I think I can answer all the questions. Let me put it that way. And there will be questions you can't answer, but the way you handle it will really matter. So at the end of the day, I mean, for the first interview, I got the job from the first interview. Not really like I did a lot of interviews. I applied for several jobs. I got only 3. I was called for interview 3 times. I mean, 3 different jobs. But the first one was the one that continued with me. Other ones dropped probably because they got somebody else before they even got to my interview day. And that was it for me. And I've been with the company and I'm enjoying it, I must say. I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants me to talk about, but that was the journey for me. Simply started working as a support worker, started learning during my night shift. Every night I was reading and studying while I'm on break or while all the clients were sleeping already. So, and I did that for like, I think a year. And that was it. Thank you. Somebody wants to say something?
No, thank you very much.
Yes.
Testimonial. We'll hand back to Ben. Are you okay, Ben, now to continue, finish up with the presentation?
All right, thank you.
You're mute though.
Thanks for that, Victor. That's insightful. And I think you made an interesting point there, because I think sometimes, getting your foot in the door, whether that's in the UK or into an organization, it might not be the ideal role, the role that you've always dreamed of doing, but actually, you have to be a little bit strategic in your approach. And I think sometimes, if you can get into an organization, you can then build on it from there. Does anybody else have any questions? Is there anything else anybody wants to kind of ask at the moment?
Okay, we're going to Q&A, right? So what you could do would be, I think what might be easier, drop your questions on the chat so I can read up your questions. I read up your questions. I think that would be a good way to start. So you drop your questions on the chat, chat box. I read up your questions, then we'll allow Ben to address them. I've seen a question coming from Odyssean. He said, what are the chances of getting a 20-hour per week job within the financial sector as an international student?
It's a good question. I think it would depend a lot on the organization and the financial institution. A lot of organizations will do internships that will run alongside people's studies. So I think, John, you mentioned, I think JP Morgan in one of your slides. I know some of the US banks do that. They have summer analyst programs as well. That's always you can always kind of go down that angle. In terms of actually being in a full-time role, 20 hours a week, possibly, but I think you're probably better off trying to get an internship or a summer analyst type program that can run alongside the studies. Yeah,
just to my own experience, when I was a student, it was a bit challenging. And talking about getting a job in the financial sector, because most of the roles were full-time. So I had to work as an administrator somewhere for the time being until after my studies. Then I was able to work full-time, and that's when I applied for my first job, or 1 or 2 jobs at the time. the rest was history, as to say.
Mhm.
So let's look at some of the questions that are coming through. Someone, Remy Lecon says, okay, let me see. Remy Lecon says, I'm a digital marketing, I'm into digital marketing. I don't know anything about. Is there a way I can be mentored through a like-minded platform? Yes, that's the case. Feel free to, I just shared a few information about who we are and how you can get in contact with us. I send a link to our website. Feel free to drop us an email and we can discuss with you for that. Yes, so that's all some things we do. What's the best way to approach a recruitment agencies without spamming their inboxes?
So I think it probably goes back to the point that I made in one of the slides around, firstly, kind of identifying the recruitment agencies that cover the sectors that you're interested in, and we rely on people sharing CVs with us. We rely on referrals. So I wouldn't say, you know, by you sending a CV, if you're sending it to an agency that covers an area that you work in, yeah, don't think of that as spamming, but that's proactive, and actually that's a good initiative. So never be concerned that you're spamming somebody. And if you're being, you know, if it's a good agency and maybe they don't cover the sector that you're interested in, the chances are they might know somebody. And again, it just comes back to that network and building on that. So that would be my advice on that. But don't think sending your CV to a recruitment agency is spamming, because it's not. Yeah.
Abra says it's important to visualize yourself already in the role, so you can build confidence that you are the ideal candidate. So yes, thank you for your comment, Abra. Victor talked about what would you say about writing cover letters? Do hiring managers really read them, considering the number of applicants they get per time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think from my experience, unless a organization specifically asks you to do a cover letter, what they're really interested in is the CV, and it's that personal profile at the top of the CV that we talked about when we looked at the example, where you can highlight key points that you would put in a cover letter. So from my experience, and this is again banking related, I wouldn't put as much emphasis on a cover letter. Put the energy into the CV.
Yeah, I agree with that. Most of the time it's just the CV they read anyway. Genevieve was asking, is it possible to price yourself out of a job when you ask salary expectations?
Yeah. So I think it's quite a sensitive one on salary, and not everybody's comfortable talking about it. But if you've got a good relationship with a recruiter, if you've got a good relationship with somebody in the business like you, John, I mean, you should know kind of what the salary banding is for a role when you're applying for that role. And I would almost have that conversation early on in the process. So when it gets to the end of a process, you're not surprised with what they're offering. If a role has only got a budget for a certain number and you're asking for more than that, it's unlikely that they will match it. Maybe sometimes they might do, but you can price yourself out of roles, definitely.
Yeah. Grace is asking, I really need this job sponsorship link. How do I go around it? I would copy it and paste that link I shared in my presentation across to you, so you have that. Otherwise, feel free to send us an email. I will send you a copy of the presentation. I will try and share that with you. Alicia will ask again, can I send my CV to Car Alliance? I have trade finance and correspondent banking experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Please send the CV across. Yeah, we will always try and have a conversation. And if we've got relevant roles immediately, then obviously we can look at those. But if we haven't got relevant roles immediately, we can register your details and we can keep you updated on roles as and when they come in. So yeah, no, please do share the CV.
Yeah. This one was asking if an agent reached out to you to fill an employment document for them to send to a company. Is it advisable to call the agent to ask for an update if you have not heard from them after a week?
Yes. So if you, the market is quite slow and applications for roles are quite high, and the time it takes for a role, people to get feedback on CVs, it might be a week, sometimes it's longer. Unfortunately, in some cases, we never actually receive feedback, so you might apply for lots of roles and actually 30% of them, you don't receive feedback. It's kind of where we are, I think, in the market. So I think you can certainly reach out to the recruitment agency if you've applied for a recruitment agency, and this is probably one of the benefits of talking through a recruitment agency, and we can kind of find out the status of that role and if it's still live, for example, or if the CV's been rejected. So yeah, I would say after a week, pick up the phone to the recruitment agency and see if you can get an update.
All right. Mike is asking, can I get a recruiter from your firm to work with me on my recruitment journey? I have experience in relationship management in corporate banking in Nigeria. I'm seeking a recruitment in the UK.
Yeah, that would be me, actually. So I look after all the front office relationship management type functions within corporate banking at Carline. So yeah, certainly we can arrange a time to have a conversation.
Yeah, you have the details there. You have your work cut out for you, Ben.
I know, yeah.
So we have a call from Judith saying that do diversity questions work for or against an applicant, because it's becoming it feels like they work against one.
Yeah, I think so. D&I, diversity and inclusion, is a huge topic, and we could probably do a whole talk on D&I. It clearly is very high on the priorities and agendas of every bank that I work with and for. So I think I don't think it works against people. I think it's now much more at the forefront and it's much more talked about. So it is definitely key for banks to have a diverse shortlist when they are looking at profiles. What do you think of that, John, on your side?
I think it's ideal, to be honest. And if wherever you are, stay who you are, Christian, well, I think just be honest about it. There was also an option to say I'd rather not say. I don't think you'll be crucified if you say I'd rather not say. I don't think it's your prerogative not to say. I don't think you're going to be discriminated against if you rather not say anything. So that's
totally agree. It's your prerogative around that.
Yeah. Beauty is asking, can a care worker to become a care worker, what are the roles, hours, earnings, and qualities? Well, a care worker look after elderly, geriatric care. Hours, you're looking around 40 hours a week. Earnings total, it ranges from between 20,000 to about 25 to 28,000. It all depends on the care role you're doing right now. The quality is obviously not too complex. Just have your basic education, secondary school, have your care training certificate, and have some care experience. I think that goes a long way on your CV. Victor asks again, some coaches don't really agree with tailoring or tweaking CVs to fit the job description. One major point they make it is that it won't eventually align with the LinkedIn profile. They say just have one CV that aligns with the role that you're applying for. What would you say to that?
So not to tweak the CV.
Yeah,
I would. When I say tweak a CV, I don't mean you're adding information or things that you've not done. I think you're basically highlighting skills that are the most relevant to that role, and you might be wording the CV differently. The question you've got to ask is, if there's two CVs on your desk as a hiring manager, one of them looks very similar to the job description you put together. The other one doesn't look similar. Who are you going to interview? So that's where I think the value in adjusting the CVs comes into play. And chances are you're probably applying for very similar roles. So you're not changing every single job, but it's you'll probably make little tweaks depending on the role that you're looking at.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's not changing it completely, but rather making some changes close to the role you're applying for. So it doesn't change your LinkedIn profile completely. That's the thing. Remy Leko is asking, how does gaps in employment affect an applicant, when, especially when you are new here in the UK and you need to do manual jobs before applying for a job of your choice?
Yeah.
How does it affect your prospects? Gaps in the CV?
Yeah, I don't think it does. I think you on the CV, even if you're doing a job that's not relevant to the one that you're applying for, don't leave the gap. Explain you're doing something else whilst you relocate or whatever it might be, just to fill in that space. But I don't think it affects the applicants that much. I think people always have gaps and breaks in CVs. It's far more common now than it probably ever has been, with the market being quite volatile. So yeah, it shouldn't have a detrimental effect on your application.
Yeah. I would think so too. It's just that I would think so. The most that you're actively doing something, I think that's what we can go around that. So how do I get help with getting interviews? I think we will address that already. What is the possibility of getting an interview? I think we will actually cover that in terms of putting your CVs right and applying to the right places on the right websites. Deba is asking, what are the chances of getting a job for a master's degree student with no job experience and willing to start internship to get experience in the UK?
Yeah, I think qualifications are important, and the fact that if you've gone to further education and you've completed that, there's value in that. I would still say have an idea of what you want to do, because you need to be targeting when you're applying for jobs, whether that's the websites that you're looking on to apply for jobs or it's the sector. Still have a focus on it, but there are a lot of internships and graduate schemes that particularly banks will advertise once, twice a year that you can apply for.
Yeah, Iburonke is asking, can I get a job here in the UK as a banker, considering I have 14 years of banking experience in Nigeria? I'm studying international business here in the UK, and I will complete my studies by September.
Yeah, I think there's obviously multiple factors there. The sponsorship piece we've talked about, the types of roles that you're applying for, and I think the other thing, a point on this, if you are an experienced banker in this case and you've got previous experience in a different country, does that bank that you work for in that country have a presence in Europe or in the UK? Because that's a really good starting point.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I had a slide I was going to share that where it talked about foreign banks in the UK. So if you had these questions and you have a banking background, feel free to reach out to me. I'll send my email address, also LikeMinds, LikeMinds88@gmail.com. If you have my number, feel free to give me a call, maybe later on during the week, and let's have a conversation around it. We've been able to help people in getting their first break within the UK space. So, and that's been my background most of my career. So, but we're happy to come in and help you to that regard. Okay. And does the bank has an arm in the UK? Okay, yes, which he said, yeah, that's fine. So really, I don't think there's any other question which we have not addressed. So I think we can call it a day. I just want to say thank you everyone for taking time to join into this webinar, and we want to wish you all the best in your various career pursuits. it could be a journey, but one thing is never to give up, never to give in. Keep on applying, keep on putting your best, keep on giving time into it. You know, I think persistence is a very key word. Once you've done your CV right, prepare towards an interview and be applying. So when you get a chance, when the chance comes through, you are ready and you are very prepared for it. So that's one thing that I talk about, devoting time. Create specific time on the day and you apply for jobs. Look for jobs in the right platforms. If you're looking for sponsorship, look for, I sent a slide that talked about those particular companies that are focusing on, that are very keen on giving sponsorship. So have a look at those names and go to their websites, you know, likes of the HSBC of this world, the JP Morgan. Go to their website, look for roles in those websites, apply directly for those jobs in those websites. I think that's going to go a long way. So thank you. There's no other question. So Ben, you want to have any further comments?
No, I think if anybody wants to reach out to me on LinkedIn or has any specific questions, no, feel free to connect. I'll share my email with John as well, who can put it in the LikeMinds group as well if anyone wants to get in contact directly. But yeah, I think perseverance is key, particularly in a tough market. And yeah, sometimes it feels like it's an impossible task, but ultimately, if you keep persevering, you keep preparing, practicing, you will get there and you will secure a role.
Okay. Thank you. On that note, I want to say thank you to everybody. I'll paste one more time our details. So you have our number. Website is there. There's a number in our website. You can reach me via our number in the website, and also our email address is there if you want a copy of the presentation, and if you want any other further support. Someone asked if we charge for mentoring for LikeMinds. No, we do not charge for mentoring and helping people to actualize the dream. We don't charge anything at all to that effect. So if you want to join the group, you to let me know. We're happy to bring you on board. So thank you everyone for taking time. We maxed out today. I think we reached well over 100, and people were asking me, John, that it's so maxed out, they can't come in. I'm sorry about that. We just have 100 spaces. So thank you once again, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. I wish you all the best in your career and your various pursuits. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben.
Yes, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
You're very
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Thank you. Have a good.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Ben.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.